Okay, firstly, I'd like to congratulate PATAS and thank PATAS for inviting me here. It's wonderful to see so many people here in the Philippines where the Catholic religion is so strong. So many people here prepared to stand up bravely and put forward the case for atheism. I wanted to speak to you today about some Australian experience we've had with clerical sexual abuse. One of the many myths propounded by religious devotees is that humans cannot behave morally without religious belief. This myth is no more credible than the creation story in Genesis, the story of Noah and the great flood, the virgin birth or the resurrection. The most cursory look at history demonstrates that religion, far from encouraging good behaviour, has been the cause of much evil in the world. The Crusades, the Inquisition, the burning of apostates and scientists who challenged orthodoxy, the terrorist attacks in New York in 2001, the murder of atheist bloggers in recent months in Bangladesh. The list is endless and it's horrifying. Nonetheless, we never cease to hear from priests, bishops, imams and rabbis telling us how we should behave and encouraging governments to pass laws that restrict our behaviour and punish us for departure from their twisted moral code. Homosexuality is an abomination, we are told. Sex outside marriage is a sin. Abortion is an offence against God. Birth control is evil. Even masturbation, surely the most victimless of crimes, is prohibited. So it is interesting to look at how churches and religious groups confront these issues when the perpetrators of these offences are the very priests, bishops, imams and rabbis who are so fond of telling the rest of us how we should behave. The sexual abuse of children in the care of churches in Australia has come under close scrutiny in Australia over the last 2 years. After much public agitation in 2013, the Government of Australia, led by Julia Gillard, who is an atheist, established a Royal Commission to inquire into this issue. A Royal Commission is a government-appointed inquiry with extrajudicial powers to compel witnesses to give evidence and produce documents. The Commissioner has a large staff of investigators and lawyers who collate evidence before hearings and examine witnesses, victims and perpetrators. The Commissioner, Judge Peter McClellan, has conducted hearings in many different parts of the country and looked at a number of different groups, both religious and non-religious, including the Salvation Army, a number of different Jewish schools and synagogues, Anglican church schools and government and church-run orphanages. The inquiry has been wide-ranging, but one of the main focuses of the Commission has been on the Catholic Church. The picture that has emerged is not a pretty one. I'll focus mainly on the Catholic Church today, as time is limited and the Philippines is very much a Catholic country. I'll find my place here somewhere. I hate these machines. So in recent weeks, the Commission looked at abuse of school children and altar boys in a small city called Ballarat in Victoria. Up to 14 priests were allegedly involved in abuse of children over a 40-year period. A priest called Gerald Ridsdale began his ministry in Ballarat in the 1960s. Within a year, he began to sexually abuse children in his care, and complaints were made by parents to the local church and bishop about his behaviour. Ridsdale was quietly moved to another parish, and his criminal offences were hushed up. He soon reoffended in the new parish and again was moved on. And the incidents were hushed up. This became a pattern that continued for many years. The failure of church authorities to contact the police when informed of Ridsdale's criminal acts against innocent children in his care, or even to have sacked him or removed him from contact with children, meant that Ridsdale continued to abuse and rape young boys and girls for many years. One young girl was raped by Ridsdale in the house he shared with a priest called George Pell. Two victims claim to have told Pell about the abuse they suffered. One was basically ignored and ostracised. The other, who was Ridsdale's own nephew, was asked, how much would it cost to keep quiet? Father Pell is now Archbishop Pell, one of the most powerful men in the Catholic Church in Australia, and now in charge of the Vatican's finances in Rome. Pell was later responsible for creating a system called the Melbourne Response and Towards Healing. Certainly a misnomer. Both schemes were designed to pay victims a minimum of compensation with a maximum of only $75,000, which in Australia is a very small amount. And the payments were always with a condition of complete silence on the part of the victims. Victims who pursued the church in court routinely received awards of compensation and damages up to 10 times the average paid out by the Melbourne Response and the Towards Healing system the church had adopted. The Commission has investigated hundreds of complaints, and the case I have spoken about today is by no means the worst. Ridsdale is currently serving 8 years in jail for some of the offences he committed. In fact, he was charged and convicted with a total of 138 offences in 3 separate court cases, and this is his 3rd jail term. Cardinal Pell today is swanning around Rome in a purple gown and a funny hat. One witness presented a class photograph of himself and 32 other young children to the Commission and told the Commissioner that 12 of the 33 children in the photo had committed suicide. Ireland has been through a similar experience as Australia, with an inquiry exposing abuse of young children by clergy on a grand scale. Last week, the Irish people voted in favour of gay marriage by a huge margin of 62%, despite hysterical opposition from the Catholic Church. Ireland is not as staunchly Catholic as the Philippines, although 80% in Ireland identify as Catholic. The lesson for us atheists who want to see change is that nothing undermines the Church's moral authority and standing in the community like a good royal commission or a government inquiry into sexual abuse. The hypocrisy of the Church on this issue is breathtaking. While lecturing atheists on their lack of moral compass because they don't believe in myths and miracles, the Church has been busy for many years aiding and abetting criminals in its own ranks to perpetrate and avoid responsibility for the most immoral behaviour we can imagine. Clerical sexual abuse in the Philippines was acknowledged by the Church in 2002. New guidelines were published by the Catholic Bishops' Conference of the Philippines, the CBCP, in 2003. And what did those guidelines require? That the bishop report the offences to the Vatican. It's a bit like the mafia requiring its underlings to report criminal activity to the Godfather. No publicity is allowed. Monsignor Joselito Asis, the Secretary-General of the CBCP, denies any cover-up, but he cannot say how many cases are reported because bishops report directly to Rome. Now, this is ridiculous. Does the CBCP seriously suggest to the people of the Philippines that they cannot tell the people of the Philippines how many priests have been involved in these sort of activities? This is nonsense. The Vatican's response itself has been underwhelming. In fact, when requested by the Australian Royal Commission to provide documents concerning sexual abuse by the clergy in Australia, the Vatican refused. The story here is that the Church is interested in silencing the voices of victims and minimising in every way it can the possibility for compensation. This issue, I believe, is one which, more than any other, exposes the hypocrisy of the Catholic Church all around the world. And I would suggest respectfully to PATAS that it's an issue which certainly ought to be exposed to the Filipino people with the intent of raising questions in their minds about the real morality of the Catholic Church. Thank you.